Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting of the Council and Committee for the Town of Petawawa to order on March 9th, 2026. Welcome to members of Council, staff, and our special guests we have here with us this evening. We'll start this evening's meeting with the reading of the land acknowledgement. As we gather this evening, I would like to acknowledge on behalf of Petawawa Town Council and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Omami Winini Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Omami Winini people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years, and we wish to acknowledge our shared responsibilities in responding to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission 94 calls to action. Call to action number 89. We call upon the federal government to amend the Physical Activity and Sport Act to support reconciliation by ensuring the policies to promote physical activity as a fundamental element of health and well-being, reduce barriers to sports participation, increase the pursuit of excellence in sport, and build capacity in the Canadian sports system are inclusive of Aboriginal peoples. Recent progress since April 2022, the Aboriginal Sports Circle has led a national consultation process resulting in the development of the National Strategy for Indigenous Sports, Recreation, Physical Activity, and Traditional Practice, funded by the Canadian Heritage School of Canada. I'd also like to mention that yesterday, Sunday, March the 8th, was International Women's Day. This year's theme of International Women's Day is Give to Gain. The Give to Gain campaign encourages a mindset of generosity and collaboration. It emphasizes the power of reciprocity and support. When people, organizations, and communities give generously, opportunities and support for women increase. Giving is not a subtraction, it's intentional multiplication. When women thrive, we all rise. Whether through donations, knowledge, resources, infrastructure, visibility, advocacy, education, training, mentoring, or time. Contributing to women's advancement helps create a more supportive and interconnected world. Together, let's help forge gender equality through abundant giving and by honoring all of the women in our lives and in our community, not just on International Women's Day, but every day. I'd also like to mention that today the OFSA Boys AA basketball tournament began. Pembroke is the host, but we have games being played here in Petawawa at Mallard High School. I was fortunate to participate in the opening tip-off this morning at 9. There's 6 games at Mallard today, some more tomorrow, and the championship games on Wednesday. Hopefully the weather holds up. So welcome to Petawawa. There's 20 teams. They came from all over Ontario, some as far as Thunder Bay, Ontario. And they're here in our community for 2 days to play some exciting basketball. And the games were good. Okay, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in this evening's matter? Seeing none, we'll get right to the highlight of the evening. We have with us from the County of Renfrew Paramedic Service this evening, Chief Paramedic Mike Nolan and Deputy Chief Mathieu Grenier, and Nick as well. They're here to talk to us about advancing people-centered models of care and to also give us a summary of what the Renfrew County Paramedicine crew does for all of us here. Welcome, and we're looking forward to having you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to all members of council. It's a real privilege to be here today. It's been many, many years since I've sat in these chambers, but I think we have a number of exciting updates for you today, and I brought 2 of my friends with me. And Mr. Mayor, if you indulge me, I'll just allow them to explain which of the programs we're going to talk about today they're responsible for, so you can know where the questions are going to go and ask.
Thank you. My name is Mathieu Grenier. I'm in charge of everything related to the program. So we have the paramedic program, we have the DTAC program that we partner with the family of here. Mental program, who's managing mental addiction and homelessness. We also have some paramedics in the hospital that help the flow and the triage, both in Pembroke and Antwerp. And then that's my portfolio. Thank you.
Hopefully you can't breathe in.
Yeah, exactly. I'm Nick LaRouche, Deputy Chief Operations.
So my main portfolio is the 911 response. And also with that is the CR team, so bringing care to patients in remote areas, accessing care, and also education and quality assurance. Great, and Libby's not here with us, and he's all things not people. So he's responsible for equipment, vehicles, fleet, mechanics, as well as some of the legal, financial, and HR components of the business. So he's the third deputy that we have in our executive level. And then we have a number of commanders. Each commander has one of the portfolios that you heard about, as well as 911 commanders who do 24/7 on the road response. As you know, the county of Renfrew is big. The traditional boundary, of course, being Arm Prior and then at the top of Hector Mariah, and then out through past Barry's Bay. As a municipal paramedic service, we also have responsibility for all Ontarians, regardless of where they call, should we be the closest asset. So it's not uncommon for us to respond into Canada, into the Bancroft area, down into Lennox and Addington, North Frontenac, as well as into Nipissing District. We also, through the Sierra team, have responsibility for all of the interior of Algonquin Park. And we also provide medical response to all of the ZEC at Happy de Joachim or at Swisha, so that entire area as well. So while the county is about 7,600 square kilometers, our response area exceeds 15,000 square kilometers. So as you know, and it's a complex place seasonally, and it's a real privilege though to support the community here in Petawawa. Petawawa was different for us in a number of ways in terms of the average age of the population, the transient nature of the military in some regards, and then we also, of course, cover off Garrison Petawawa, Atomic Energy or Chalk River, and the federal forestry properties as well. So it's quite diverse in that we do provide the medical response into the base and work very closely with the fire service and the MPs in those response, whether that be in the PMQs or on the range. It adds an interesting dimension for us, let's say, and we're very pleased to be able to support that. Today's presentation, I've given you more information in the slides that I intend to speak to, but I wanted you to be able to at least have a takeaway that is a little bit more encompassing. So if you do take the time to read the slides, then hopefully they will answer most of your questions. I'm going to start off with this first image, and in some respects, if it's the only slide I'm going to have today, it might be the most helpful one, because what it demonstrates is really the ecosystem of what it means to be a paramedic service. And I'm going to drill it down both on the 911 side of the house in terms of what that means to Petawawa, but also on the community side of the house in terms of what that means to Petawawa. But around that, there's quite a bit of information related to why we deliver these programs, how we deliver these programs, what our quality models are, what our peer-reviewed research tells us, and the sophistication on the back end to try to do it not just for Renfrew County, but to be a leader in the world in terms of the quality of the services we provide, the sophistication, and also the efficiency with which we deliver those services. So we're very proud of that. But when you look at this graphic that's before you, just put things in context in terms of size. When we talk about the 911 program, that's everything in that inner bullseye. There's a purple in the middle that you can't see. There's a red, an orange, a yellow, and a green. And those represent the colors or the priorities that the Ministry of Health assigns in terms of 911 calls. And they're assigned by priority or acuity. And when we think about, what we do as a paramedic service, that little dot in the very middle of that purple are the most life-threatening circumstances. Those are your cardiac arrests. You're unable to breathe, you're choking with a full obstruction, and so on and so on. And that represents just shy of 2% of what we do as a paramedic service. And you can take those numbers most places in the world and it'll be transferable. It's that red, that 18% that have a time-sensitive illness or injury. That's your heart attacks, your strokes, right? Your seizures, those things that if we don't fix it as much as we can right away, and or get you to a place like the cath lab at the Heart Institute, right? Or into a stroke center or a trauma center, then the likelihood of you dying increases significantly. So those are the ones, and that roughly 20% of what we do are what we consider our highest acuity calls. The other 80% are lesser acuity, but still come in through 911. And so that might be your broken bones, right? Your slips and falls, all of the things that happen in life, often making up a lot of the older population that have complex chronic disease. So it's that 80% of that lower acuity where we actually have a great opportunity, not only through 911 response, but through our community programs to make sure that we've done everything we can so it doesn't happen again, for example. So it's that, how do we break that cycle of either risk or vulnerability in our communities? And we can talk a bit about that. Everything outside of that, again, by proportion, is in the community side. So everything inside the bullseye is Nick's, everything outside the bullseye is Matthew. And that's where it gets a little bit more of a kaleidoscope, and that we have our community paramedic programs, and they really are focused on typically older adults with complex chronic disease. So how do you help someone with COPD or diabetes or heart failure not succumb to those issues and not have to have episodic breakthroughs that end up with a hospitalization or a 911 call? And then how do we also look at other risk populations? The MESA program that you may be familiar with, which is typically younger adults that have what we consider a complex social disease, right? Where we have mental health addictions and often concurrent homelessness. And those can be equally complex. A different approach in terms of the engagement, but the program approach is consistent with the balance of our community paramedic program. So we've taken the model that we started in Deep River almost 20 years ago, and we've been able to scope, spread, and scale that model, not only within our community for other populations, but also outside of our community. So most of Ontario, well, all of Ontario, have community paramedic programs that have their DNA dating back to our program that originated in Deep River here in the county. There are now 19 other countries who are running shades of our community paramedic program. Based upon our original research and socializing of the program, we've been able to make a significant change around the world based upon the model that we found success with here in Redford County. So we're very proud of that. When we think about the other balance of that, Matthew talked about paramedics who work in emerge. So when you go to the emergency department, you may be greeted by a paramedic who's working in triage. If you're in the back of the department in Pembroke, for example, you might be greeted by a paramedic who's now going to be your initial care provider in the emergency department to be able to support the staffing model and a real interprofessional approach to that care. And we also receive offload funding from the province to make sure that you can go from the paramedic stretcher into a hospital bed. We actually staff that with paramedics in partnership with Pembroke Hospital so that that transition of care can happen very quickly. And then that paramedic who's now working in the hospital can then become the intermediary to be able to ensure that they get access to observation bed or resuscitation bed and so on, and maintain that fund. All of those things outside of that bullseye on this chart are 100% funded by the province. And I think that that's important when you think about growth and where we're putting our emphasis. The prevention community programs are all 100% funded by the province. And that's critical in terms of how we actually protect the paramedics who work in the ambulances to be available for those 20% of super high acuity patients, and then be able to service the balance of those lower acuity patients through the 911 system. And the province funds 50% of that 911 system, and the municipalities that kind of run through in the city of Pembroke cover off the other 50% of that. So I think that's an important dynamic that when we talk about levies and taxes and increases to programs, all of these programs that we've talked about on the preventative side that are actually protecting the 911 side, mitigating any growth pressures on that side, are funded by the province. And I think that that's key, especially from a local municipal perspective. When we think about what does this 911 model look like here in Petawawa, I've got a couple of numbers for you that should stick. One is we do over 1,250 911 responses in the town of Petawawa on an annual basis. Our average response time to the highest priority patients is 6.7 minutes. So that's our response time to those calls here in Petawawa, excuse me. When we think about that in terms of our calls, we looked at what time of the day is the most popular time for people to call 911. It's 10 o'clock in the morning, which is interesting because in many communities, it's actually a little bit later in the day. Don't know why. And then when we do look at the types of calls we're doing here, the number one call that we do in Petawawa is actually falls. Falls are the number one reason, and the second one are breathing problems. and the third are chest pain. And certainly falls have, we think, okay, someone fell. But when you fall and you can't get up and you may have fractured a hip, then that can be a major life-altering event. And we're lucky to have orthopedic services at the Pembroke Hospital, for example, to be able to support those types of patients. We also are a little bit outside of our traditional window to do a bypass. In most parts of the county, from a little bit beyond Meath Hill and down, if you're having a major heart attack, a STEMI as we call it, we take you directly to the Heart Institute. If you're having a major stroke that requires EVT or a certain intervention, we'll take you to the Ottawa Civic Hospital, or we have telestroke options for certain types of patients in Pembroke. So just so you know, we're often moving around in the system, and it's a fairly dynamic deployment model, knowing that when we look at the paramedic responses, which is the orange box, we do in excess of 15,000 calls a year as a paramedic service. Contrast that to VTAC, which is what's in the green part of the chart, and the IVC model, the integrated virtual care, which is a partnership here locally with Family Health Team. We see over 72,000 requests for service. So you can see how that will drive access to primary care. But we also know that that results in a significant number of 911 calls that don't happen and emergency department visits that don't happen. And I think that that's critically important when we're looking at over 2,000 individuals a month serviced by VTAC are no longer having to go to the emergency department to receive their services, whether that be unattached, access to services, or they need some level of redirection in the system. And our medical receptionists are exceptional at saying, oh, did you know you can get that at the pharmacy? Or did you know you can get that mental health service by calling this number, for example? So it's really that first point of contact to be able to make sure that you're using the health system in the best way possible. Are there any questions at this point, Mr. Mayor? I'm not sure of your typical format, but I'm happy just before I pivot into community programs specifically, if there are any questions.
I think we'll let you play the whole presentation through, and then we'll hammer you. So,
sounds great. Matthew doesn't put his child to bed at some point tonight, but we'll get going here for it. All right. So what does this look like for us? Our goal is to reduce 911 calls. Why? Because it means people are in crisis less often, and it's something that we know through prevention. We're very good, public health literature and literature that we've published in international peer-reviewed journals that say by engaging you as early in your disease process as possible, we can prevent or prolong the amount of time until you have a major life-threatening event or even die. And we also have a very matured palliative care program that the paramedics are involved in, supporting home and community care and physicians and other providers. But our goal, as we often saw in palliative care, at end of life, it can be very complicated both clinically and socially. We've identified that if a 911 call happens and you're intending to die at home, but it happens because something's changed, maybe you've had a seizure, your breathing's changed, or the family's not comfortable, we go in and we help take over that care until those natural services can come in and be able to stabilize you with pain management or whatever. And I think that those are some of the key things. So not only do we want to reduce the incidence of people calling 911, because if you've called 911, something preventable often has happened. And our goal is to prevent those things from happening. And then secondly, once you have called 911 and we've responded, we're in the process now of changing how we respond. It might not be an ambulance with 2 paramedics that comes. It might be 1 paramedic in an SUV who comes with ultrasound, with point of care testing. We can do your labs at home, be able to look at your blood, be able to treat you accordingly, or perhaps call your own physician, a VTAC physician, or a base hospital physician to get prescriptions, referrals, and follow-up and so on. So those things are evolving for us. But when you look at the chart on the left, the red line, you can see that our trajectory is downward on 911. If you compare that to most municipalities, they have an upward trajectory in terms of 911 to the tune of 10% or more per year. Not only have we stabilized it, we've improved it significantly by having, a heavy lift in terms of the prevention work that we're doing. Again, that's 100% provincially funded. And that also then assists us in our response time. We're working through a transition with the province around dispatch algorithms and MPDS, or medical priority dispatch system. So we've had some fluctuation in the overall response time, but for the most part, we've been able to have a reduction consistently in the 911 calls. And now we're playing with what is the priority within each of those response areas. The Sierra team is an important part of our work, and we work very closely here with your fire department, who've been exceptional partners. I remember one night the weir down on the river, and many other circumstances, both here and with the garrison, that we've had exceptional experiences, and we'll continue to do that. Suffice to say, the Sierra team is not just a special operations team to us. It's actually a way of evaluating and operating within a dynamic risk assessment model. And it's about how do we get care to someone at the highest possible level with the hopes of fixing them. And if we can't fix them, then we need to at least stabilize them and then maintain that level of care coming out, which is exceptionally high level of care given the circumstances that we're going into. So whether that's you've all been to the Barron Canyon, whether that's an off the top of a rock, or whether that's, a hike, a paddle, a portage, or using MRF's aviation services in the float planes. We also have an agreement with 427 Squadron to provide us some support here locally. We have ropes capability, water capability, and so on. So the goal here is not to duplicate any services. You have exceptional fire services here in Petawawa, but there's more often an opportunity now to either have an interagency approach where our focus is specific to the patient and the patient care and getting our staff to that patient as quickly as possible. In some circumstances, it makes sense to bring the patient to care, depending on the complexity or the risk of the situation. Think of, CBRN, or chemical, biological, radiologic, nuclear. They're the hot zone that the firefighters are far more adept at working within, and then we set up outside of that hot zone. When we think about it in terms of the model of care, really we see ourselves as part of a much bigger ecosystem in health. We dress like public safety, we actually deliver health services. And so to do that, we've had to set the table for the conversation with many agencies that you might not think of working with us on a day-to-day basis, whether that's church services, whether that's hospital services, but doing that on the discharge end, not just the dropping off end, and so on and so on. And I think that that's been a real point of maturation for our service in terms of setting the conversation with these organizations and finding ways of giving more and getting more out of those organizations to benefit your community. And that's been one of our areas of success. We take a standard assessment input-output evaluation model, and we follow the Canadian Standards Guideline in terms of community paramedic program development, which was modeled after our system here, which is doing a community needs assessment. Your community is very different than other communities within the county, and they are from other municipalities as well. So we look very specifically at what does each community need, how do we shape our services, and then how do we support that both on the 911 and on the community paramedic side. We don't just take a blanket approach. And I think that, the partnership with VTAC and the integrated virtual care and having increased staffing there, and I know Gary's burning a hole in my head right now, because he's always on me about how do we increase staffing and how do we get more for Petawawa, and rightly so. But in doing that, that's a very good example of where we've stepped outside the box to be able to make sure that we have alternatives in the VTAC offering and our partnership with Judy and Paul and IVC with Dr. Fitzsimon's involvement. And I understand you heard from them very recently. So very pleased at that, but that integrated virtual care component comes through VTAC as a provincially funded program through our department that Matthew's responsible for, and then we have built it out from there. So kudos to all of your support for that program. This is just an alignment of the Ontario Health priorities and how we plug into each of their areas of capacity and flow. And I think that that's critically important in terms of the dimensions in which we play. We have a basic value statement, but we also very specifically define how we fit into the broader health system. And then you can look at the numbers in terms of the patients that we've serviced at a global level, and then how we're doing at a very specific level. And so a big part of what we do is economic analysis, and we've worked very closely with both the Minister of Health's office, Minister of Long-Term Care office, to be able to do independent economic evaluation of community paramedic programs using our model, but looking at the scope, spread, and scale across Ontario and what it costs and how many visits are now happening as a result of our involvement in the program. One of the data points on this, and this was an early evaluation, was our involvement in the CP, Community Paramedic and Long-Term Care Program, results in a 23% reduction in hospital admission. And that's critically important when you think about trying to move the needle 1%. We're able to move that in a big way by getting out in the community. And then also looking at, what are the impacts around length of stay, utilization of the 911 system, looking at the experiential model, if you take the quadruple aim approach to evaluation. And this is a very telling one in that if you're enrolled in our community paramedic program and you have the results that we've already explained, that costs the province $8.40 per day per patient, compared to home and community care, over $100, long-term care, and ALC, if you're in the hospital, it's between $1,100 and $1,500 per day per client. So we're pretty happy with that independent analysis that the minister's office had done on the program. So what does that all boil down to here in Petawawa? I think it's important that you know in the MESA program, we have 17 people, and I'm glad it's a big enough number that we can de-identify, but are actively in crisis today related to mental health and addictions, and some of which are also homeless. And many communities don't see that side of the community. I'm sure many of you hear about it from your constituents, but that's an important number. This isn't a Pembroke problem. This isn't a county problem. Everybody has their own numbers that we can slice and dice and have a look at. But suffice to say that we're quietly and very respectfully in these people's lives on a day-to-day basis to be able to prevent further crisis or death in some circumstances by being able to manage them in your community, in their homes, and being able to access further services, such as the heart hub that's being stood up more recently, and getting access to services such as these. As well, in the community paramedic response unit, we are actively managing 636 clients here in Petawawa with our community paramedic model. Those are typically older adults with complex chronic disease, one or more chronic disease, typically on 5 or more medications. That's the vulnerability profile. And 133 of those clients specifically are using VTAC as their primary provider. So access to primary healthcare continues to be a challenge, as you know, but by being able to work with the Petawawa Centennial Family Health Center, we also provide a day-and-a-half service in that location, and our goal is to increase that level of service. One of the challenges associated with that is space within the facility and administrative support, but we'll continue to be creative with them to try and maximize and optimize, or at least match, the demand from the community with the availability of our community paramedic-led clinics within Petawawa, and I think that that's important. And then lastly, something that's little known is around our 844 number. So we work with individuals who we know have vulnerability, as well as facilities, long-term care homes, retirement homes, and so on, and encourage them to call a 1-800 number, 844 number, directly speaking to a paramedic 24 hours a day. And I think that that's critically important in terms of health system navigation. But as a result of that, here in Petawawa, that's reduced over 150 urgent cases that would have otherwise gone to the emergency department. I think that that's critically important as a secondary triage capability, or primary triage, meaning before 911. So the VTAC program, I think you've probably got a good understanding of that from the last meeting that you had with Jonathan and Dr. Fitzsimon and the others. But when we look at the Petawawa number at the bottom, that is a very healthy number of 6,907 patients that have been provided attachment locally through the IDC program. That is an extraordinary arm of the VTAC program that is making a significant difference here in the community. So kudos to that team and yourselves for continuing to support that program. That is those are the kinds of numbers that are going to result in reduced 911 calls, reduced emergency department visits, reduced length of stay in hospital, and early discharge. And that's critically important. What does this look like in terms of when we look at it overall? About 52,000 patients served. So over half of the county's population is VTAC. And then you look at the number of encounters, the paramedic-led clinics, and the assessments. These numbers continue to climb at an extraordinary rate. And the feedback from the people has been extraordinary as well. This is a bit of a schematic for those of you that want to geek it out in terms of what is the flow of a patient through the system. Suffice to say, we've done our homework in the back end to make sure that it has both health system engineering and planning, but also good escalation and opportunities on the back end to make sure everybody's getting the care that they deserve. When you think about it in terms of hybrid appointments, we work very closely with Jonathan Fitzsimon and the physicians to make sure that everybody gets the highest level of care possible, whether that's a paramedic in-house, doing your assessment, drawing your blood, doing your diagnostics, and then working with a physician, or in some cases a nurse practitioner, to be able to round out that care so you get timely access to prescribing, referring, and so on. So what does this look like in Petawawa? We know in terms of almost a split in terms of attached versus unattached encounters by municipality for those who use VTAC. So you may have a family physician, but you've chosen to use VTAC because the wait time, for example, to be able to access that physician may be too great, or whatever your reasoning. And there are many, many reasons, but suffice to say that's what the profile looks like in this community. On average across the county, it's about a 70-30 split between attached and unattached patients. And there's your age breakdown for your attachment status, and certainly the highest populations in that working family age, and I imagine the military has, a fairly significant representation there in terms of families. But it's that older age cohort that we worry most about, those who have complex chronic disease or those who may have a new diagnosis of cancer and not having someone to be able to follow them adequately through the health system, and those are certainly challenging. ED diversions, significant ED diversion as a result of IBC, VTAC, and the broader community paramedic work. So Matthew's job is to put Nick's job in jeopardy. He's trying to put him out of business by reducing the 911 calls, and that's really our goal. Our assessment centers, information is there for you, paramedic led. You can see the number of cases, and this is something that the mayor often asks me for in terms of where are we at in terms of the clinics, how many people are using the clinics, and do we have the right mix of availability to demand? And even our medical receptionists are saying, oh, you live in Petawawa, you don't have to go into Pembroke anymore, you can go to one of these clinics. And I think that's really the win here. So with that, Mr. Mayor, happy to answer any questions, turn it back to you. But suffice to say, we're very proud of our ability to service your community. All things equal, we're very happy to have the paramedic base, which we do on Civic Center Road. And on a personal level, very happy that my family, my daughter has an Molson Dairy Bar and feels every part of the community here, and it's a nice connection for me to your community as well. So thank you for your time.
Unfortunately, that might be leading to higher diabetes.
Gonna keep him in business.
Well, thank you for all of the information that you have given us so far. I think what a lot of people in Petawawa don't realize is they see an ambulance station and a couple of ambulances, and they don't realize all of the quiet, hidden care that's going on around them on a day-to-day basis, and all of it helps prevent 911 calls and visits to the emergency. So thank you to you and all of your crew for everything they do and for all of your innovation programs that are being copied not only in Ontario, but across Canada and around the world. So I'll open it up for questions from members of the council. Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Noel, for coming and team. And yeah, you should be very proud of the background work that these people are doing and the services you're providing to the whole Redford County area is outstanding. And what progress and has it ever evolved? It's just amazing what that's been done. So great job. Thank you. Pass that on to the whole team.
Thank you. Councilor John.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for the presentation today. I've seen you speak many times, Mike, and your passion for the subject matter is always very impressive. So thank you for that. Just one quick question. You mentioned direct to the heart center or civic hospital in Ottawa for stroke. Do we have anything that happens with regards to CHEO? Is there a barrier where you take the kids to CHEO as opposed to Pembroke or is it a hospital decision to go from Pembroke to CHEO?
That's a great question. So as it relates to adult trauma, so significant trauma, as well as STEMI or certain kind of heart attack that is life-threatening, the literature currently supports a 60-minute window from the receiving facility. So as fast as people may want to get there, we're just outside that by about 15 to 20 minutes the way that we live. And so in this community, for those circumstances, we can, in some cases for stroke, for example, go to Pembroke Hospital. And if it's a certain kind of stroke, typically we will have already pre-initiated orange to be en route so that should that person require further care, such as the surgical intervention associated with stroke versus the pharmaceutical intervention, then we can expedite that transfer to Ottawa. That's relative in that CHEO for trauma actually has a 30-minute window, not a 60-minute window. And that's what the current literature supports in terms of survivability and so on. However, we use orange almost on a daily basis in Renfrew County. And we always do that in error to the side of caution for the patients that we're treating. Sometimes it's based upon the information we get from dispatch and we get it rolling. Or we'll also get their land transport teams or the geo transport team rolling even before we get to the hospital. And I think that that's really quite important for a community such as yours, in that, we have that 15 to 20 minutes from here to PRH, but know that whether it's at the time of call or and we can exercise those options. And in those circumstances, sometimes we have orange sitting on the pad. We go straight into the helicopter and off to the city. So it doesn't necessarily obligate a stop or a delay in that care. And in some circumstances, depending on what's going on, sometimes it's a prolonged extrication with our friends in the fire service. We'll be able to land them on the highway and off you go directly. And that direct can be to GEO. It can also be to the trauma center. Stroke and STEMI or heart attacks are slightly more complex in terms of the literature associated with that care, because there are some pharmaceutical options that can be given closer to home. But then the follow-up care is typically, if you're critical, then the follow-up care would be the same. And it's the same where we're able to fully resuscitate somebody in cardiac arrest. If we resuscitate somebody in cardiac arrest here in the community, because the paramedics provide very high level of care, then we will activate the process, depending on the reason you went into cardiac arrest, so that you can either be advantaged by the Heart Institute or in some cases the trauma center and so on. So there are many bypasses, as we call them. And then we also have local bypasses such as orthopedic bypass to Pembroke Hospital for the types of cases that they've said that they can preferentially manage. It's a little bit more complex in the Lockwinnow Road area of the county near Renfrew, because some of those time distance calculations have to be made on the fly by the paramedics, depending on, if it's 6:30 in the morning, by the time you hit the hill in Canada, it's going to be, jammed up. So then we might actually have to move that, leaning towards Pembroke, because we know it's going to add 15 minutes to our travel time just getting through Gridlock and Ottawa.
Thank you. Councilor Kermit.
Thank you, Mayor Service. Thanks, Mike, for coming to speak to us tonight and sharing this wealth of information. And thanks also for all of the innovative programs that you've managed to roll out over the years. I can't count the number of times that I've heard you interviewed on CBC or seen you on the news talking about programs. God, I even saw you on the news once when a plane flipped over in Toronto. You happen to be present for that. Pull that off.
I was told not to swear, so I can't use how people describe me, but I'm a magnet of sorts.
But thank you for everything you do for our community. It's great to have a leader like you in the position that you're in and giving us such great quality. Thank you. Thank you.
Councilor Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to echo what everyone said. It is pretty amazing, some of the programs that you guys have started and are thriving. And we're definitely spread quickly. I do all the respiratory testing for about college paramedic students, and it's pretty well their number one place. I always ask them, where do you want to go end up work? And Renfrew County is definitely number one on their list, which goes to show that, we're spread even to the people just getting into the service, which is always good to hear. The question with the Sierra team, I do like how you mentioned that outside the bubble is funded by the province, which I think is definitely overlooked by a lot of people. They don't realize the different funding, where it comes from. So with the Sierra team, say when you do something like Dolphin Park, there's some form of cost recovery from the province or from the MNRF, or is it strictly from the county side?
Thank you, Councillor, through the council. The mechanism for intermunicipal billing for paramedic services is between local to local. So we do an inter-municipal reconciliation on an annual basis for calls that we do into Nipissing District. And we actually, it's actually a unique document in that we have, it's not a mutual aid because those are typically reciprocal, as you likely know. But we do have a response agreement with Nipissing District. So, for example, we will do the backcountry component, and then their ambulance from Whitney, for example, might meet us at Canoe Lake or Smoke Lake or wherever we put down. They'll do the land transfer, and then that frees up my staff to be able to come home. We also are working with Nipissing District, Parry Sound, Muskoka District to be able to stand up their own capabilities that would mirror ours in sort of the day-to-day dynamic risk assessment component. And we've also worked with most paramedic services in Northeastern Ontario. One of if I could just take a moment on that, one of the most material changes to us in the last 24 months has been the advent of text to satellite transmissions, especially from remote areas, whether that be the ZAC or the interior park or not far from behind, the hill in Calabogie. So it's not something that we primarily provide to out of county areas around that reconciliation component. We do more calls in county that have dynamic risk component, whether that's hunting season, whether that's a tree stand, whether that's the Ottawa River in certain areas, or getting into the 900 lakes or so that we have to do. So when it's in county, it's us on us. When it's out of county, we have a reciprocal intermunicipal billing agreement with them. We have had conversations with the Minister of Health specifically about the paralleling the agreement of a fire service that responds into a provincial park as an alternate billing arrangement associated with that response as well. So that is in discussion. But the ZEC is a very good example. The vast majority of people that we go into the ZEC for are people from Renfrew County. They just happen to be in a tough spot that has no radio reception, very complex operations in that environment. And a surprising number of people from Renfrew County as well in the park that we're responding to. And we've had a number of, significantly high profile events last June that you may recall. That took 16, 18, 24 hours to be able to complete one call. So the intermunicipal component would definitely not reconcile in that circumstance, but when we balance it out, it helps us build the capability for response in the county. And then our job right now is to really franchise out that model without cost recovery, but franchise out that model so that other paramedic services around the world look at some things that we're really learning up based on our experience and as well on the Ukrainian experience. And it's this notion of how do you provide a very high almost emergency department level of care in the field, knowing that it's going to be prolonged care, right? Whether that's the weather's, souring on us, or the patient is souring on us, or we have to wait till daylight to be able to get a float plane in, or Garrison or Trenton SARTACs are weathered out, for example. So all of those dynamics are at play on the regular, and it's something that we take pride in. And it was actually a call in this area that was really a game changer for us, where our staff ended up in a very precarious situation. So no different. We have phenomenal 911 response paramedic staff, but the Sierra team is not only especially equipped, but has an aptitude towards managing risk and putting that patient's clinical care first. And if that means managing a patient overnight and going in with an expectation you're going to care for that patient for 24 hours, so be it. That's our goal. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that was good.
Thank you.
Any questions? Councilor Coutu?
Thank you. Thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you to your team for what you do every day. I think it's amazing that you're going up river, as it were, and stopping people from falling in. I think it's amazing this model is being replicated and that you have such high satisfaction. Those reviews, those are priceless. I just want to say too, with all the population increasing, this area is just fueled for growth with the Garrison and the CML. And I see your call volumes decrease 911, but given this population pressure, are there any kind of future needs on the horizon, any future pressures you see impacting this model?
Specific to this area or just in a broader context? I think that attachment to primary care is a key component in terms of how do we encourage people to care for themselves, right? And, the healthcare system has really been designed to take care of people. And I absolutely think that that's the wrong approach. Is how do we give people the tools to be able to care for themselves and then support them in that journey, because it's complicated. And frankly, most of us weren't raised on how to better care for ourselves. We're kind of raised on how to take care of people. And I think that whether that's a generational thing or when you're a part of a big family, it was kind of a survival thing. But what we're seeing now is we have at least another 7 to 10 year runway of baby boomers coming through the system who are living longer, who have higher health expectations than the previous generation, and need to be able to have their supports in place to be able to manage the complexities of advanced age and end of life decisions simultaneously. And I think that gray tsunami, I don't know if you remember back to 2000 when we all said, okay, what's our strategic plan for 2020? And it was all about the average age of the population. That's real. You couple that with food insecurity, you couple that with often one of the family unit dying and the other one being left to fend for themselves. And in rural such as yours, the issues of the children having gone away to university, stayed away, and no longer here to be able to take care of those parents makes that a very complex situation that will only be compounded as that age of the population continues through. So that's why we're attempting to get ahead of it in a relatively sophisticated way so that we can continue to do an exceptional job with paramedics in the 911 system, but to be able to protect that by providing these other services. I would say that's our number one threat, not only from a health and social service perspective, but also from an economic perspective, because it's going to cost us a lot of money as society to manage that. But the gutting of rural communities of people having to move into the city where they're closer to the hospital compounds that issue in our communities. You know, the young, healthy populations that are moving in need good access to primary care, need good paramedic services. And with the great news in terms of this community, that creates other challenges. So that's why we'll continue to work closely with Petawawa and Huntington Health Center and do what we can to make sure that nobody feels abandoned by the health system, but also make sure they know how to use the health system to its maximum advantage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Simon.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mike, for saying that one of the things that you strive for is to ensure that people have the opportunity to have their own health, because the model has changed over the years from when I was a kid, when the doctor was the person to, you know, you should probably know a little bit about your own health, to be your own advocate, that kind of thing. I do, I listen to everything my colleagues have said, but one of the things that I hear most often and most appreciated here in the town of Petawawa, probably by seniors, is the wellness checks and the ability to be seen and to be seen and to be heard and to have that opportunity to influence their own care. So thank you very much for that on behalf of the people who talk to me about what they really, you know, what they really need. And because a lot of these people are alone, isolated, or have recently lost a loved one, and that support network is gone. And when we don't have a support network, we're at a whole other level of vulnerability. So thank you so very much, gentlemen, for
Any further questions or comments? So I'd just like to thank you again for all the innovative programs that you've designed and implemented. We talked about MESA, community paramedicine, the offloading of patients at the hospital. The one you didn't mention that I'd like you to just give them a quick briefing on is the outfitting of vehicles and how that's saving Renfrew County a lot of money.
Sure, thank you. And hopefully Dave doesn't watch this. Because not an issue that we should be overlooking, because Dave and his team in logistics, so WC Delivery, have done an exceptional job, whether that's in our equipment tracking. We have a program called Operative IQ and have increased our quality and our performance associated with that, which is the foundation for the care that we provide. But one of the significant challenges that we found, especially during the pandemic, was how long it took to get emergency response vehicles. And I'm sure the fire service, police service, and others had similar experiences. We tend to replace 5 to 6 vehicles a year. We have almost 40 vehicles in our fleet. And so that's no small feat to be able to manage those, keep them on the road, reduce the downtime and so on, and also manage our costs, because that is part of the 50/50 program as well. So we became, through Dave, and prior to Dave, Brian Leahy, Deputy Chief as well, who actually kicked the ball and got it rolling. We're able to achieve Ministry of Health certification as a vehicle upfitter and vendor. So normally you go to a third-party company to be able to have, a Tahoe turned into an emergency response vehicle that meets the standards in the Act related to the certification of our vehicles. So after having waited quite a while and paid a lot of money for those upfits, not only have we changed that in that we are now a certified ministry vendor upfitter of vehicles, which is innovative in its own right in the municipal sector. And I have to say that, the CAO and council have been incredibly supportive of these, seemingly benign innovations that actually turn out to be a lot. So not only do we do that, but we work with a rental car company, lease company. So we're no longer buying those vehicles outright in the same way we used to, where we'd have to buy something from Chevy, have it sit on the lot for a year, wait for it to come back from the vendor, and then be able to put it on the road. We're actually able to turn those vehicles around in very short order, in that we have typically days to perhaps weeks to receive the vehicle, and then it's days to perhaps weeks to be able to upfit that vehicle, and we can manage all of those costs ourselves as an independent upfitter. And we've now started upfitting vehicles for other municipalities. So not only does that, replace some of the costs associated with the mechanics and the others, we're able to manage that supply chain and not take on a capital liability in the same way, and be able to design a vehicle that meets our needs that we know from others is very attractive. We're also working with a manufacturer from Germany who also uses the Mercedes chassis, which we use, which thankfully from a diesel perspective is very highly efficient, especially with the price of oil these days. And in doing that, we're trying to keep some competition in the market and make sure that we don't have any supply chain delays like we experienced during the pandemic. So we're continuing to innovate on the logistics side, create revenue opportunities for the county, and as well be able to service our needs without the delays or the lags, or have to purchase out of a catalog that may or may not meet our needs here in the community. We're looking at, for example, hybrid Toyotas now as emergency response vehicles to get away from American buying, number one, and lean towards the procurement requirements of the province, even though we're exempt, and then be able to have a durable vehicle that's the standard around the rest of the world, but not a North American built. And I think that that's something that's certainly on everyone's mind these days. So thank you for that prompt, and I hope I covered off the piece.
Oh, that was good. And just one last question about, this is the first time I've heard of it, so I'm sure a lot of people were unaware of the 1844 call to that whole system and how that avoids 911 calls. But how does somebody qualify for that delivering the 1844?
I'll let Matthew take this one.
So within the program, we have about 10,000 patients in the county. And each of our patient has a magnet on the fridge. And we talk to all the long-term care home, the nursing home, and when they have a low acuity call, they can call our permanent line. And the permanent line, we receive about 40 calls, 50 calls a day from these clients instead of calling 911, that we can manage through clinical decision with them, or we can send one of our 3 paramedics to go and visit them if they need any different support or assessment or treatment. So this is how we create another layer of access to care instead of calling 911. So we, divert the 911 system by about 40 to 50 calls a day with that line.
Yeah, another great program for sure. Okay, are there any other questions or comments? So again, thanks to you, your leadership team, and all the paramedics out there in Renfrew County for everything you do. And I'd just like to finish with talking about some of the numbers just here in Petawawa and how it's not always a siren, it's not always an ambulance that's coming to do the good work. But quietly and effectively, you're treating 17 MESA patients, 636 community paramedic visits, and the 6,900 RC VTAC visits here in Petawawa. So I think that's important that people are aware that it's not always 911 and an ambulance coming. You do so much more for all of us here in Renfrew County. So thanks again for everything you do, and we're sure glad you came and filled us in on all the important things that we're doing here, not only in Petawawa, but across the county. All right, thanks. Okay, we're gonna follow it up with some more emergency services. It's time for the Fire and Emergency Services Monthly Activity Report for February. Acting Chief, thanks. Good to see you later. Acting Fire Chief Crew. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, members of council. The report for February 2026, starting with Chief's comments. I attended the senior management meeting on the 3rd. On the 5th, I attended the bargaining meeting. The 9th and 10th, we were in negotiations with our firefighters, and on the 12th was the budget workshop. We had 9 incidents throughout the month. We had 3 calls for smell of gas or smoke. We had a furnace concern on the 23rd of February, and with smoke inside the building, one on Brighton and the other one was Actory Road, which was a confirmed structure fire in Merchant Valley that our crews were called to primarily and started operations and then worked together with Merchant Valley. We had 1 fire alarm. It was due to hot ashes that were taken out of the residence, and we had 2 motor vehicle accidents. For training, their shifts did platoon training for ice water rescue scenario for the net range objectives, from self rescue to using some of our equipment and donning our equipment for PPE. Special training, we did ice water rescue training with the crews, which we were able to certify some more firefighters. And for the critical incident stress debrief training on the 19th of February, we had 10 personnel start with the Warrior Health, which was a critical incident debriefing training for our staff under the money we received from the province, from the grant. We had a couple minor repairs on our vehicles for buildings, the garage door repaired, some maintenance on the generator. For self-contained breathing apparatus, we have 1 pack that was put back in service, and a porta tank that we need to replace off our tanker. Our fire prevention team completed 21 inspections and had some administration through the month. For smoke alarms and CO alarms, we had 8 residents checked, brings us total to 27, and we started with 917 fire permits in January, and we're down to 914. That's my report for February.
Thanks, Greg. Questions, comments on the report? Okay, that was kind of a quiet month, actually. That's good. Good to see.
Yes, let's. We like.
Need a motion to accept the moved by Councillor Root, seconded by Councillor Driscoll, that the Fire and Emergency Services Monthly Activity Report be accepted as information. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks.
Next, we have the Economic Development Monthly Activity Report for February. Christine.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. For the month of February, the Economic Development Report is before you. I'll just quickly speak to some highlights in this. We did only have 1 registration for a home-based business, continued inquiries into the industrial park, moving forward on some CIPs, and we do have a CIP application for Rising Kind Holistic Health that we'll discuss later. In business general, there's conversations with a new app that's available within the community in Renfrew County as a whole, but starting locally within Petawawa and Rivers Connect My Town services. We did enjoy the grand opening for your little unique world in their expanded space, and thank you for all the members of council who were able to participate. I did meet with a business to review their business proposal. Unfortunately, it's not for development within Petawawa, but in a neighboring community. We've had ongoing engagements, and we are conducting business checks with local businesses. So in the month of February, I did go into Beyond Nutrition and a conference center in continuing that program. Communications with Garrison representatives on the Petawawa gap analysis as we look for expanded services within the south and north town sites. With ongoing development meetings and review of site plans. We did meet as a collective team to discuss the purchase of a property and the possible renovations for said property. We will note that the Circle K franchises located with the two gas stations in town did have new franchise ownership take over in the month of February. So we are working with those new franchisees to register the businesses appropriately. And then we did have a follow-up meeting with the Philippines to discuss marketing materials for investment portfolio requests. Social media and communications, we are ramping up for the container market and ongoing Shop Petawawa support, as we did redirect the Shop Petawawa link on the main municipal website during the February. For partner engagements, there's been a lot of additional work with the Petawawa Valley Chamber of Commerce, and I did serve as the lead for the International Women's Day, which we held on March the 6th for the Petawawa Valley, Petawawa Valley Chamber of Commerce. It was held this year at the Pembroke Curling Club, and we saw over 100 attendees, 6 community vendors, and it was more of a cultural experience this year. It was very successful. As I said, we are ramping up for the container market, taking registrations and determining the rental opportunities. We also met about the Petawawa Ramble, having our first meeting and organization for that as we go into the 8th year of this particular event. Rudy did attend the EDCO conference. We of course had our PBAN meeting. We had budget meetings and 2 meetings with Round Canopy Parachute team and friends on a possible event coming to the community. There was also consultations specifically from a business perspective and a staff perspective with Bill consulting related to the community transportation feasibility program. Of course, the budget workshop itself. And then I did resubmit the ROD application for the wayfinding. So there was an additional communication with our MRA representative to verify the application before it was resubmitted. So that is the community report for the program.
Thank you, Christine. Questions on the report? None? Okay, then I need a motion to accept the report. Moved by Councilor Donovan, second by Deputy Mayor Sabrin, that the Economic Development Monthly Activity Report be accepted as information. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried. Next, we have ED-06-2026, the Community Improvement Plan for 7 Plymouth Street. Christine?
Yes, so this is the CIP program that I mentioned before. It's for Kristen Burgess, who is the proprietor of the Rise in Kind Holistic Health Service. She took over at 7 Hilda Street, the location formerly which housed the Western Financial Group at the Hilda Street location. It's been vacant and empty since they relocated to 10 Canadian Forces Drive. Kirsten has gone in and is now offering professional services there. We discussed CIP and getting signage up, but she was keen to get into the space and servicing her clients. So now she is ready to add the signage and the additional supports. And so this request is essentially for the signage. There's already existing fascia and pylons behind there. It's just really to change the lenses associated with this particular business. It is the first application from this client. And so the ask is for up to $3,000, which is the value of the potential signage that she would be installing, and there is sufficient budget in 2026 envelope in order to accommodate this.
Questions on the report? Good to see the CIP program ramping up for 2026. Okay, if you're comfortable, I need a motion. Moved by Deputy Mayor Sabrin, seconded by Councilor Coutu, that council, under the Community Improvement Plan adopted by bylaw 1441/21, enters into a funding agreement with Kristen Burgess of Rise Kind Holistic Health, authorized applicant for the commercial property located at 7 Hilda Street, permitting the CIP financial incentive of up to $3,000 under the signage improvement grant. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried. Thanks, Christine.
Thank you.
Next, we have the public Works monthly activity report for February. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Mayor Service, meeting members of council. All right, we'll take a little tour through the monthly report and update council on all the projects that we have planned for 2026. So under civic properties, we have several projects. The Centennial Park retaining wall study, Civic Center Diamond 2 LED lighting upgrades, Civic Center parking lot phase 2 design completion, which is well underway. Civic Center mini putt design to facilitate future upgrades. Civic Center pickleball court, playing surface coating and lines. Norman Banky Hall accessible ramp with the design being completed presently and will be ready to go for construction very soon. We also have the Norman Banky Hall engineered upgrades to the building to meet regulatory compliance for the daycare. Ted Marcotte behind me, he's on lead on this project and we're making good progress. And as well, we have the public works upgrades phase 1 design, which is underway. Under water and sewer projects, we have the disinfection byproducts reduction study. So I have the draft report and I've been reviewing it along with my counterparts that are working on this report. Once we have a final meeting to discuss the draft report, the report will be finalized. I hope to have it before council within a month. So that'll wrap up the disinfection byproduct study. The Woodland Water Tower. So the goal for this project is to be tender ready for design with design completion and construction cost estimates by the end of the fiscal year and ready for budget deliberation for 2027. East Street Pumping Station generator replacement is being completed this year. We have the Renfrew Street Pumping Station electrical and control systems upgrades. This project seems to have been reoccurring, but I'm happy to say that this year it will be completed. The electrical works have already commenced, and then we'll have capital controls going in and doing all the control changes. So essentially that project is taking the electrical service and all the controls, computerized systems from the exterior, like where the wet well is, and moving it into the new building that was built a few years ago. So it'll be a much more efficient system. As well, the plant operators will be able to access the SCADA controls so that they can monitor to the station in real time, and view pump performance and all those nice things. So it'll be a good upgrade for that station. We also have the sewer treatment plant boiler replacement. Good news there. We have tender going out on March 17th with a close of April 7th. And then under road construction projects, we have Portage Road, which is going to tender tomorrow. The tender close on April 7th. So really hitting the ground running here, which is great. Also some good news on Norman Street in and out. BEI has accepted the cost estimates that were the provisional item for the parking lot, which was part B of the tender. They've agreed to carry out that work at the price that was quoted in the tender. So that's good news. So that can proceed. Black Bay Road resurfacing and Wilbur Street. Those are 2 in-house road projects this year. The tenders were out for our maintenance tenders. Teddy did a fantastic job getting them out on March 3rd. So we actually have the tender closed today for concrete patching, line painting, winter sand, street sweeping, as well as resurfacing. And I'll be bringing the award recommendations to council next week. Under fleet procurement, Teddy's working away on finalizing the document for our plow replacement. And then a quick update on the 10-year capital infrastructure plan. It was Steve Webster and I were hoping that it would be here for presentation this evening. But we had some significant updates with the garrison as far as growth on the garrison proper, both the north and south town sites. And due to that, the projections, we held off on presenting. These are significant plans that the garrison has, and I know CEO Colin was involved in our discussions with the garrison. So we want to make sure that we're incorporating these announcements within the infrastructure plan. We have a follow-up meeting scheduled for later this week. I can let council know that the initial feedback I'm getting from the water and sanitary side is really good. We're in a good position to be able to allow the growth, and service the growth without any, right now, my understanding is that we don't have any, capital infrastructure requirements on our existing road network, which is fantastic. So there are ways that we can accept this growth, within the infrastructure we have, which is really positive. So, yeah, it'll be more good news on top of all the good news that's within the 10-year capital plan. So happy about that. Okay, as far as the trade show update, just a reminder, it's being held on June 3rd and 4th. It is open to the public. There's no charge for the public to go to the show. We're really doing well with how we're coming along. It's essentially sold out. There's a waiting list now for indoor booths, and I believe there's two exterior booths left. So we're really doing well. We have council presentations in March and April, Arnprior, Town of Renfrew, Township of Laurentian Valley, and we've also got confirmations from North Algona Wilberforce. So that's great. Our focus is on fine details, making sure everything goes off without a hitch, and securing lots of volunteers and promoting attendance. That's really where we're at. So we're less than 90 days from the show, and I'm so happy it's sold out. So that's really good. Oh, and one other update. There were sponsorships tied to the trade show. So there were platinum sponsorships for $3,000, gold sponsorships for $2,000, silver sponsorships for $1,500, and bronze sponsorships for $1,000. And these sponsorships total $24,000 if they were all sold, and we've sold out all of them. So 4 platinum, 2 gold, 2 silver, and 5 bronze. So another great update there. All right, as far as operations, it was a busy month in February with winter control, and then a quick change to snow hauling, clearing hydrants, right into a lot of really good preparatory work done by the crew, Teddy, Peter, and Rob, and all the guys. I can't say enough. We've had a really heavy melt there the last few days, and I had one call today, and it was about backyard drainage, which wasn't really involving the road. So that's fantastic. And I don't think Teddy had too many calls either. So we did a lot of proactive work this year. And as well, I'm starting to see the payoff of tracking the problem areas we have and then addressing them during the year, like doing the ditching that needs to be done, changing culverts. It's really starting to pay off. We're starting to see that we're not having as many flooding issues in the spring. So we're going to continue that this year. I was talking to Peter this morning, and he's out, he's recording things, making sure he's writing down any areas that we have, and then we're going to look at resolving them this year. It's working. What else? We have under civic properties, there's some really good training that Ted mentioned here with Miles and Chloe, some of our young up and comers, and they've started taking their ORFA courses for their ICER certification. And Ted also completed a round of staff performance appraisals, which is great to see. That's definitely one of the focuses in our department, is to make sure that we're sitting down with staff on a regular basis and seeing how they are, seeing what ideas they have, because staff often have a lot of great ideas and maybe they're just afraid to bring it forward. So kudos to Ted, real good open communication with his staff. And I like the way that department is progressing. It's starting to really pay off. So good job, Ted. Also, another point that Ted made here was staff and volunteers did a great job on the skating rink this year. Councillor Driscoll's keen on this, and he's looking forward to an even better partnership next year. So that was great to see. I think there was some good steps taken with regards to volunteer help with the outdoor rink. And then under water and sanitary, you have the updates provided. I also have another guest speaker here in the audience if there's any technical questions, but that's the monthly report for February. Happy to take questions.
Thanks, Chris, and yeah, thanks for all the proactive work. I've received several comments on the removal of all the snowbanks and what a difference that's made for a lot of people's driveways and ditches and flooding. So good job on that. Questions, comments on the report? Thanks, Councilor Driscoll and your volunteer team for all the work you did on the outdoor arena this year. It was a good season. And do you want to take a second to talk about your little fundraiser now that we're in the topic?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so we put it out there last week about being able to sponsor boards, and we talked about it here a little while ago, and the community support has actually been phenomenal. I've been having actually 3 people reach out to me during this meeting alone. So we're well over 50% sold in 72 hours. So hopefully it continues on that path, and we're gonna have a little hockey game to raise more awareness against the town fire department versus the U18 Patriots this Sunday. So anyone who wants to attend that, it's at 6 o'clock at the Civic Center. And if you have any other questions about sponsoring a board or doing anything, there's multiple options that we can go over. You can just give me a call or send me an email.
Okay, any other questions or comments? And I need a motion to approve. Moved by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Roots. That the Public Works monthly activity report be accepted as information. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Yes. Okay, next we have PW-05-2026, the facility condition assessments. Ted, your chance to shine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The staff report for this was facility condition assessments. When I was hired, it was a priority to get done. From my review of all the stuff in the office down there, we couldn't find one, so I believe this is probably the first time this has been done in the town. So we procured Rothman Iams to perform this for us. We allocated 22 town sites, so 10 buildings, 8 garages, and then some sheds and 4 park facilities. So with this portfolio, the value of the 22 recently assessed buildings summed to $59.45 million. So representing a significant investment from the town. So the building adjustments, insights, and guidance to support the development of multi-year capital planning. So it'll help me plan or put my budget, what things we need to focus on and replace as the come to end of life. The facility condition index, or FSI, as they're normally called, is asset management benchmark and measures quantifying the condition of the facilities, expressing the ratio in need of repair from the 0 to 100%. So it's just taking your buildings, giving them a grade. That's basically what it is. So up in the standards of investments, so repairing, renewing our HVAC, roofs, modernizing electrical plumbing system, and lowering the FSIs will thereby extend the facility's life cycle and ability to assess with service and delivery. So looking at the 22 assets, overall rating was 20.55. On table 1, the FSI, so our facilities are all in fair condition. With that said, the description was the facilities largely functioning as intended. Normal deterioration, minor is observed. So for maintenance is we're going to have increasing reactive maintenance to repair failure, breakdowns, or equipment operating at beyond expected useful life. Maintenance will require within the next 5 years to maintain the functionality of the building. On table 2 of the report is an asset summary with the current replacement values, and it just summarizes all the buildings that we did, the current replacement value, the 5-year capital renewal that it'll need to maintain a FSI of 20.59% throughout the buildings. So in table 3, it's the top 10 assets in greatest need of funding by cost. So it's not, your biggest building, Civic Center, the next biggest building, the Public Works Garage, and as you go down the list, you can see it just, as the buildings get smaller, the need for funding decreases as well. So table 4 has your top 10 assets in greatest needs of funding. So this is not necessarily the Civic Center, but you'll see it's the Centennial Park washroom, and then some of the Public Works garages and the OPP station. Need of more funding to bring it up the higher, bring up the FCI to where we want to be at 20%, thereabouts. On the next table, the funding scenario for the 10-year period is laid out, where you'd see if you just left it status quo and just did maintenance, where you'd be and how far you'd follow your fast or follow you fast in your building conditions, or by investing a little bit of money every year in your buildings, where you can keep and maintain your buildings at a certain level and push those HVAC units and rooftop units a little past their useful life as you work through replacing them. So the funding scenario number 4 for the town to reach a target of 12 with an investment, it's $2 million a year would be required, but we're shooting for a little around 20, so we're not quite at that expenditure. So we do feel it necessary to request council to set annual funding commitments moving forward, so we can plan more infrastructure, because the roofs are need to be done, HVAC units, a little bit bigger projects that may need a little bit of engineering to them. So this is basically where we stand in our buildings as we took over. Questions?
Okay, thanks for that. I think you may be right about this being the first ever facility assessment that I can remember anyways. So it's great that we spent the time and money doing this to give us a future outlook on where we should direct dollars to ensure that our infrastructure lasts a little longer than we hope. Questions? Councilor Root.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ted. And for sure, it's the first time I've seen it. I think it's a good way for to actually see how much real estate value we have, and it's quite significant. And it's a good planning tool and for budgeting to keep everything well maintained and service. So thank you for bringing this forward. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ted, for the overview. For sure, this gives us a real clear picture as to where the challenges lay, and I'm not surprised by the top 3 because they're older buildings, and it will allow us to direct dollars to where they need to go, and for those big projects that will keep our buildings for years to come, I guess. Just one. So we've got a brand new public works building, so I'm presuming that probably really helped us keep our condition assessment at fair as opposed to sort of at poor, or am I sort of misreading that just in terms of like a brand new building in great shape? Did it wait?
So typically with a brand new build, you go through it and everything is brand new, right? So it's 50%. So it really doesn't sort of factor in. You don't take that. You're not going to do any maintenance in that for the first 5 years or 3 years, right? So it really doesn't factor in the overall number.
Okay.
Because you're not doing anything to the build because it's brand new. So you're not really factoring in that number that much. It doesn't really factor.
Okay.
Change the number.
Okay, so fair is an accurate reflection as opposed to it being considered as part of what keeps the percentage or keeps the index higher.
Yeah, it's not falsifying the numbers by bringing it up. You're not spending any money on that building for the next 5 to 10 years because all your units are brand new, right?
Right. Okay, thanks for that.
And I guess on that line, the recent renovations to the town hall as well would not affect the numbers either. Because now that all this, I'll call it maintenance and upgrades that we've done to this building, you're not gonna have to do much more. Well, I'm sure there's stuff that still needs to be done in town hall, but not as much as would have been done. At a fair assessment?
Yeah, correct. So we added a washroom, we did some upgrades. But it's the mechanical stuff we didn't touch. So you're painting your handles, your doors, all that comes down from conditioning accessory this was done.
Councilor Turner.
Thank you, Mayor Service. Thanks, Ted, for bringing this forward. This is a great planning tool, and certainly, asset management is a big thing these days, and this feeds right into it. The condition assessment immediately was ringing a bell with me, and I knew that we had done something in the past, but It was, we had hired Macintosh Perry in 2014 to do an assessment of the library. And that's why I've been bringing it down. That's why I've got a report here on the May now.
Maybe I'll just add, when Ted and I looked into, past reports and didn't find any, that actually, and it's mentioned in the report, I think this is our benchmark really to start with. So we're starting in a position of strength. So, from a staff perspective, I think, previous councils and indeed previous staff who were doing their best to look after our facilities did a really relatively good job. We have areas to improve, absolutely, just as every municipality would, or does rather. But there's no need for panic here. Everything is really just, let's look at the facilities, let's look at the needs we have, let's work through proper budget planning each year, capital investments. And the great thing now the council has, and from a staff perspective as well, is we now have a manager that's actually focused on this particular file for the town that we didn't have before. So having civic properties manager is really going to help us, I think, in going from where we are, which is a relatively good position. And I think we can improve upon that 20.5 FCI percentage.
I'll just add, Chris's, when we did our budget, this year, we took into account this report and we added some of the upgrades in my operational budget. So a lot of these things, smaller items will be getting done, like exhaust fans, doors, painting, and all that stuff will be done right up out of the operational staff in this year's budget that you guys approved from.
That's good to hear. A lot of the little things that you wouldn't think of. Somebody not giving them closer examination. It's sometimes those little things that if you don't fix them, will leave the bigger repairs. That's right. That's good that we're hitting those. Councilor, good to.
Thank you, Mayor Service. Thank you very much for bringing your skills to this round. Thank you for your leadership. I just want to say I definitely agree with your recommendation that we do this every 5 years. That sounds good. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Councilor Driscoll?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is one report I definitely like because like you say, it's going to give us a benchmark for the next several years. And like when we do go into budgeting, it will be nice to see hopefully some of these numbers increase when we do this again in 5 years, which I think is very good because we do have a lot of assets to maintain. And I think we can continue to do a good job maintaining them. So that's great. Thanks.
Further questions or comments? I noticed that the number one, I guess I'll call it the worst asset that we have are the bathrooms over here behind us in Petawawa. Didn't get on this year's budget, but I have a feeling we might be seeing that coming up.
For me. Couple of times.
Any other questions or comments? I need a motion then to accept the report. Moved by Councilor Couture, seconded by Councilor Donovan. The council accepts the report for information. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? It's carried. Thanks, Kirsten, Ted.
Thank you.
Oh no, Chris is still there.
Yes.
Oh, no.
PW, dash 2026. Just bring it in new backup.
That's right.
Petawawa Drinking Water System 2025 Annual Report and Petawawa Wastewater System 2025 Annual Report. Chris?
Okay, so yes, we're looking for a recommendation from council to accept the 2025 Petawawa Drinking Water System Annual Report, as well as the 2025 Petawawa Wastewater System Annual Report. These are annual reports that come to council, and they check off certain regulatory compliances that need to be done each year, and they have to be brought to council no later than March 31st, so we are right on schedule. The reports were provided, and I brought in my technical experts just in case of questions. Getting smarter. Yeah, happy to take questions.
Okay, questions on the water and wastewater 2025 Annual Report? Everybody's good? I did send in some questions and received timely answers, so that was good. One thing that I did notice that maybe you could point out was the sludge numbers and how when we commission our net zero project, the sludge numbers will come down and you can just relay that info.
You want to take it down? Sure. He's here, you can handle it.
Mr. Mayor. So, for the last 7 years, we've been operating the wastewater treatment plant without a working digester. So all we do is, treat with the SPRs and clarifiers and sludge haul. After that, it's all to a holding tank. So we're not digesting the sludge to break it down. So, this year we're hopeful that the net zero project will get off the ground and we can start using our digesters. When that happens, we plan and hope that, it'll drastically reduce the amount of sludge that we have in our holding tanks, which ultimately go on the fields. So that number should decrease quite a bit.
Okay, thanks for that info. Then it will save us a little bit of money because we don't have to pay to get it home.
Correct.
That's correct. Right on. Any other questions on the, oh, Councilor Roots?
Thank you. What's the time frame on that, do you think? Late summer? Late summer?
Well, that was a tough question. Let's go. We're hoping to start commissioning, I would say late spring, early summer. We have had a recent meeting with the MECP with regards to our REA amendment application. It's looking good, but ministry approvals take time. So probably looking at 1 more month to get that approval. Once that's complete, then the construction of the secondary containment can be completed. And once that's done, we can start commissioning.
Thank you. Please keep us posted.
Getting there.
Further comments or questions? Okay, thanks. And I need a motion then to accept those two reports. Moved by Councilor Roos, seconded by Councilor Bristol, that the Petawawa Drinking Water System 2025 Annual Report be accepted as presented, and that the Petawawa Wastewater System 2025 Annual Report be accepted as presented. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried. Thanks for coming, Chris.
Thank you.
Next, we have Planning and Development Monthly Activity Report for February. Melanie.
Good evening. Couple highlights out of our monthly report. February 23rd, we had our new building inspector start. He's settling in quite nicely and enjoying being in Petawawa, so we're excited about that. Chris did mention the 10-year capital infrastructure plan, so I reviewed those plans as well with Chris and JP2G and participating in meetings with the garrison. They do have a lot of plans for residential development on the town sites, so staying in engaged in the conversations with those. We did send out invitations for our 2026 development summit. It's not a full day like last year, it's a half day. But the garrison and CNL will be talking about their needs, focusing on housing, but also business needs. We invited just shy of 100 people. People are starting to forward them on to other people, so they're expecting good attendance similar to last year. In the Appendix A, active planning application, there's a couple things to point out. We do have one application is marked as new in the chart for part lot control to fix a lot line adjustment. We actually have 3 of these right now in town. Another one on Wilson Avenue where homes have been built over the property lines. So we're fixing these up, but also trying to figure out why we're having these issues and how to prevent them in the future. Council recently saw the zoning amendment to allow the change of the use of a house into a business. So the last day of appeal is Thursday this week, and then the business owner is able to put in their building permits, their housekeeping signage, and kind of take the next steps to get that business moved from Pembroke. Retail B, we're waiting for their last review. We sent them a few final revisions last week to their site plan and the associated drawings. They also sent the draft site plan agreement, so provided they get that information back to us timely. You'll see that next Monday. In Appendix B, our monthly building report for building permits in February. You can see the number of permits is very similar to last year, up by a couple. The value of the building permits and the permit fees, the construction values are all down a little bit, and that's just the nature of the permit. Last year, we had a couple of new single-family dwellings submitted beginning of the year, and they have a higher value than what we saw so far this year. As I've mentioned before, now with the development charges being able to defer to occupancy, we're going to see some probably lower numbers until we get to occupancy. So not going to quite be apples to apples this year comparing month to month. And those are the highlights. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Thanks, Melanie. Questions on the report? Where are we with the Blackberry LaPointe subdivision?
So that subdivision was draft approved by the county, and it's now up to the proponent to meet all the conditions of the draft approval. And fulfill, and then we'll start working on them. But they're very much in design and engineering design.
Okay, it's great to hear that we're going to hear from Retail B soon. Another exciting commercial development in Petawawa. It's good. No questions, and I need a motion to approve the report. Moved by Councilor Driscoll, seconded by Deputy Mayor Zabrin, that the planning and development monthly activity report be accepted as information. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried. Thanks, Melanie. Next, we have the Legislative Services monthly activity report for February. Don and Colin.
Thank you. So for the month of February, MLES has the 11 calls for service for animal control. One of those calls was on the garrison. I wanted to highlight, like each month we report on, the 20% of our pet tags that are custom tags are saved by DocuPet, and I will be working on issuing a media release over the next couple of weeks with DocuPet and the LSPCA. So over the last 2 years, we've accumulated $1,700 in that fund, the Safe and Happy Fund, which is going to be donated to the Brantford County Animal Center. So since 2020, approximately $7,000 has been raised through the sale of these designer tags. Just wanted to give council an update on that. And we were having more winter parking tickets being issued in February, and hopefully now that the melt's on, we won't have as many. We started our annual issuing of taxi licensing and taxi vehicles for the drivers and the company operators. And just for February, we only had 4 false alarms, which were all first offenses.
Through you, Mayor, to council under human resources, as Chief Crew or Acting Chief Crew mentioned earlier, on February the 5th, to myself, Acting Chief Crew and Acting Deputy Chief Knott and HR Coordinator Jolene Jerva met with our legal counsel to do pre-consultation into our next 2 meeting dates for the union for negotiations, and happy to report that on the 9th and 10th we met, and Council already aware, we ratified our both the union and Council ratified our collective agreement for 2025 for a 3-year deal. Under recruitment, happy to report to Council that we have a new staff member, not a permanent staff member, because as Council is aware, we didn't have any new staffing changes, but we did bring in a co-op student to work placement through the PMFRC. Michelle St. Bois, she started last Monday, and she's doing a 4-week placement here and doing a fantastic job. Already has set up the HR files, working on her bylaws right now. We're starting our bylaws today, and doing all the filing involved. And then there's a few other things that administrative tasks that we have her signed to do. So that's a really good initiative. And again, that's a free service for us. We pay upfront and we get reimbursed from the PMFRC for for the hours that she works. Under other, I'm happy to say and do a quick shout out, which I forgot to do on Friday at the awards luncheon and the Employee Appreciation Day, but just a huge kudos to Joey Gerva. She did another fantastic job, and that was a really well attended recognition for our staff, council, and we're all there. And I think it goes to show you the importance of recognizing our staff. Under Commissioner votes, we had 28 requests for service in February. Under our marriage licenses, we had one license for February with revenue received of $100. Just touch on the community flag request for the month of February. For the first 2 weeks, it's Black History Month. And there was one flag request received and approved in the month, which will be for April. So that'll be coming up on the next couple of reports. Under council requests, we had 9 requests for certificates of recognition from the mayor's office. And then there's a number of meetings listed both by myself, Dawn and Kate throughout the month. Happy to highlight any or answer any questions the council has to any of the questions, but that is the report for the month.
Another busy month. Legislative services. Questions on the report? No? Okay, then I need a motion to accept the report. Moved by Councillor Carmody, seconded by Councillor Coutu, that the legislative services monthly activity report be accepted as information. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried. And now I need a motion to go into closed. Moved by Councillor Roots, seconded by Deputy Mayor Sabrin, that the meeting be closed pursuant to section 239, paragraph 2, paragraph E of the Municipal Act 2001, S.O.2001, C.25 as amended, to discuss litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board regarding a status update on current legal files. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Carried. Welcome back, everybody. We just finished a closed session. Council received a status update on current legal files. Direction was provided to the CAO. There's nothing further to report. I need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councilor Coutu, seconded by Councilor Driscoll. That the meeting be adjourned at the call of the mayor. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It's carried.